One of my favorite just novels of all time is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. And the best story, I think, in that involves one of the brothers, Alosha. So Alosha is he's a monk when we first really get to know him in the story. He is at an abbey, and he's one of the youngest brothers there and goes about his normal business as monks do. And then the leader, the abbot for this monastery, comes down with an illness in his old age and is getting ready to die. And before he does, many of the brothers are coming in and having an audience with him, hearing the last words of wisdom that their leader has to give them. But he specifically calls Alosha to come and see him. And he says to Alosha, "You need to leave the monastery." He said, "The rest of us here are in this place because we have to be removed from the world. Because otherwise they would go out and sin notoriously. They have to be separated from the rest of the world." But Alosha is not that kind of person. He can withstand the world, as his abbot tells him. And so the abbot, their leader, requires that he go out into the world. That is the way that he can best serve God. Now, Alosha is troubled and puzzled by this command because he doesn't want to leave. But because this is the last command of his leader, because in the monastic community you do what your abbot tells you to do. He does this. He leaves the monastery and goes out into the world. We don't see him for a bit in the story until much later when he's needed, where we find him the leader of a group of young boys. And he's there keeping them from being ruffians and doing those things to get into trouble that young boys often do. And instead, he's made them into a force of good. Alosha didn't hide behind the monastic walls. He went out to reveal God's glory in the world, to make that glory known, and to use it to transform the lives of others who would go on to transform even more lives. And that idea of going out and revealing that glory in the world is really what this day is all about. It's what we hear about in our gospel this morning. Because once again we have the story of the Transfiguration, of Jesus going up on the mountain and having there with him Moses and Elijah appear. And he's there, we hear, in dazzling white. So we have this literal glory, the literal glory of Jesus in dazzling white, in such dazzling light that it's even hard to look at. And we also have the sense of glory in that Moses and Elijah are there with him. That Jesus is fully the fulfillment of the law, represented by Moses, and of the prophets, represented by Elijah. And aside from the two of them, Jesus is not alone. He has there Peter, James, and John, who, as we probably would do in this situation, freak out a little bit. They're not quite sure what to make of what's going on. And then, as Moses and as Elijah Elijah are getting ready to leave, Peter has this idea pop into his head. He says, hey, it's good we're here. We can build these tents, these dwelling places, literally, for you, Moses, and Elijah. So you can stay here a little bit longer. You don't have to go yet. You can stay here for a long time. And we're told by Luke that he didn't know what he was saying. That Peter wasn't saying the right thing at this moment. The reason for that is those dwelling places, keeping them there, Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, would have kept that glory from fully being present, from fully being made known. It would have hidden that glory behind these tents, these dwelling places. And we see even more that that's what God has in mind, that glory needs to go out. It doesn't need to just stay on that mountain, but it needs to go out in the world by what he then says from the midst of the cloud that comes and surrounds them all. Because he says, this is my son, my chosen. Listen to him. Listen. Jesus can't reveal his glory if people can't hear him. He can't reveal his glory if he isn't going out in the world and allowing people to actually hear him. Jesus still has work to do at this point. He can't just stay on the mountaintop. He has to go out into the world to further reveal that glory. To not keep it hidden on the mountain or hidden in tents, but to let it shine forth in the world. We too are called to be that sign in the world, to follow in Jesus' example, to reveal that glory of God, of Christ Jesus in the world. And we have a good example of that in Elisha, who goes out. He goes beyond the monastery. He changes the lives of these young boys. And he turns them into a force for good in the world. We've seen that in our own work here at St. Paul's. That going out, that revealing that joy and glory in the world. We see it by bringing people in, by inviting people to be a part of this community, to join us when we have our wonderful feast on our third Sunday. We see it by going out and being there for Saturday, for supporting that organization by food, by volunteering, and by leading our 5K, as we will, for them in fall. We see it by all those who help in the community, whether it's with Hero or Horseshoe Farm or one of the many other things that we sometimes don't see those in our midst doing. There's many ways for us to go out and show that glory. Because what it takes to help reveal Jesus Christ to those in the world is by being a beacon to them, by showing people the same love that Christ Jesus showed us. So as we move forward from this day, as we move forward in our lives together, take a moment and think. There is already many ways that we have shown God's glory in the world. But it's not meant to be kept in these walls. It's meant to go forth from these walls, just as Jesus went forth from the mountain after the Transfiguration. To stop and think, what more can we do, both as a church and as individuals to better show the glory of God in the world.